Welcome to another edition of Working with Gen Z. Friends, we've often said that if Gen Y was the generation which accepted technology, Gen Z was the generation which expects technology. They're truly called the digital natives because they're very familiar and quite easy when it comes to adapting to new technology. While that's a boon and that's a plus when people recognize or think about Gen Z, technology has its own sort of growth curve and how it's going to evolve. And if we look back in history, we say that, okay, what was the progress of technology? We saw that perhaps in 100 years, we've seen things like the television, we've seen things like some of the basic inventions that have happened. But over the last 50 years, the way technology has moved is everything but linear. And therefore, it is kind of posing a challenge both for Gen Zs and maybe the wider folks around the world. And so today we're going to try and examine one such technology which is making waves, and perhaps there is a dark side to that technology, and see how Gen Z and perhaps even other generations are looking at it. So to help us with that is my guest, Ayush Prakash. Ayush, welcome to the show.
Nikhil, thank you for having me. Excited to talk with you today.
Excellent. And as we've done with every guest, I'm going to take a few moments to quickly tell you a little bit about Ayush. Ayush is an Australian-born Indian-Canadian author and podcaster residing in Montreal, Quebec. As the director of communications for New Sapiens, a cutting-edge AI company, he brings a wealth of knowledge to his work. He holds a BA in philosophy in Toronto Metropolitan University with a keen interest and impact of technology on his generation. Ayush delves into subjects as artificial intelligence, cryptocurrency, genetic modification, and extended reality. His passion for these topics fuels his desire to demystify complex concepts for Gen Z. Recognized also as a natural-born leader from a young age by teachers, film coaches, friends, and family, Ayush has channeled his straight into writing. In his first book, AI for Gen Z, and Data to Stop Disruption, he addresses the challenges and opportunities that AI presents to young people's future. So, Ayush, we're very happy you're here and glad you will help us to demystify some of the questions. Welcome to the show again.
Happy to be potentially of help. Really excited to talk with you today.
All right. So my first question, Ayush, before we dive into the question, you studied philosophy, but then you went to the other end of the spectrum. Notwithstanding that you're from a generation which, of course, adapts technology like water to a duck. But what was the switch that went from philosophy to becoming a kind of a deep techie, if I can say, or a tech entrepreneur? So just help us to. I'm curious on that story first.
Yeah, absolutely. So I went into university to specialize in AI ethics. Around 2019 and 2020, this was supposed to be the bigger field. The intersection of the humanities and technology was always something to look forward to and be inspired by. And so I kind of wanted to understand ethics from the ancient Greeks, and then look at contemporary philosophy, and then look at how are we using artificial intelligence, and where do those, lines of thinking, modes of thinking intersect. And then COVID hit, and I was still, getting Zoom University, as it's called. I'm attending Zoom classes from like 8 o'clock to 5 p.m., which is, that's a different story altogether. But the AI minor kind of went out the window because of COVID and everything, just the tumultuous time that it was. But for me, I'm someone that doesn't really like not doing something, even if, maybe I cannot do it in certain ways. And so what I mean by that is, instead of just relying on academia to teach me about artificial intelligence, I just relied on Amazon and YouTube and Google. And what I realized after, and this is, I guess, why we're here today, is Gen Z are fundamentally unprepared to live in a world to coexist with artificial intelligence technologies, from the ravages of job automation to the confusing time of deepfakes to, the World War III-esque phenomenons of autonomous weapons. It's like there are so many things to talk about, and I feel right now, at least, that my generation is just like they're not aware that they need to be aware. And so I kind of, this is the filter that I used to write my first book, AI for Gen Z, and then start the podcast, which I had you on, which I was very happy with. And, that's why we're here now.
Okay. Well, fascinating. I should just hear that story and the connection. And really struck by what you said that perhaps your own generation isn't aware of what's coming and how do we look at technology. So let's dive into it. I'm going to ask you lots of good questions here because I think coming from a different generation, the gap is perhaps even wider. But let's begin. We're going to focus here, Ayush, on deepfakes. Help us to understand, maybe in simple terms, okay, what are deepfakes, right? And how are they developed as sort of a basic phenomenon? And then in your experience, and as they've been gaining a lot of sort of mainstream news on the potential upside or maybe the downside, rather more the downside, right? What, in your view, have you seen also how deepfakes have sort of progressed and evolved, right? So maybe two questions. One is help us to understand deepfakes and how they're created by the AI technology, and how do you see deepfakes progressing from here and through the way forward?
Yeah, absolutely. So deepfakes are essentially fake audio and or video that are created by artificial intelligence. It's usually a deep neural network, and you get a lot of documents, a lot of audio, a lot of video. I asterisk a lot, which I'll answer. I'll come back to, and you upload that to a deep neural network, any online service, and at the end of it, you would get kind of like a copy, or like an amalgamation of that audio and video. So let's say it was audio, my audio or your audio, you'd be able to upload that and then be able to make you or I say anything. Video is a little trickier, but essentially it's the same kind of concept where you upload enough and the video that comes out essentially looks like you or I. Now, how has it advanced in recent years? So before, so there's an article from 2019, if you just Google it, and the title reads, "I created my own deepfake. It took 2 weeks and cost me $552. And so this was kind of the status quo pre-ChatGPT, let's say, pre that little LLM singularity, which we'll come to. It was creating a deepfake was something that was reserved for only people who actually wanted to do it. It was something where you had to actually put a lot of time and effort to gather everything and then train the neural network. It cost money, it cost time, it cost, electricity, energy, etc. And so it was kind of like out of the reach for the masses, for the layman. But now you only need 3 seconds of someone's audio or video, and you can do it for free. I mean, if you just search deepfake creator, I don't encourage anybody to do this. Maybe if you're doing it for like a school project or something, but if you search deepfake creator, you can just like create any deepfake of anyone saying or doing anything. And right there is kind of just hold on, I can make a deepfake of anybody in the world saying or doing anything. Where is the regulation? Where does that stop? What potential societal ramifications come about? And, these are great questions. And unfortunately, we are unable to answer them. And on the flip side, we will be getting those answers very shortly.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And you're right. I do want to touch upon some of those that you mentioned, maybe a little later in our conversation, but let's take it step by step. So obviously you've explained the technology, you explained, it isn't very complex algorithms or, writing a complex code. I mean, I think even just hearing you, it seems like someone can quickly learn how to make a deep fake. Now let's take, from your initial comment that, how have the Gen Z generation then kind of, how are the Gen Z generation seeing a deep fake or the onslaught of deep fakes? And even more important is perhaps, can you think of examples, right, where it has impacted, whether it's through social media or in any other way where you sense that, yes, all hell could kind of break loose so just curious, how do you see the Gen Z looking at it? And then maybe an example or two of, what happened with sort of the downside of deepfake.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's difficult to say how Gen Z specifically look at it because, we'll get to that question, but it's difficult to say how they look at it because, frankly, it's kind of this like incognito thing where most people don't even know sometimes that they're looking at a deep fake. And so when you're shaping public opinion, when you're shaping social consensus with a deep fake, it's like how do you measure that? We don't have any tools for that. And so I don't mean that as like a non-answer, but it's just
Sure.
I don't know whether you've consumed any media in the past 24 to 48 hours that was fake or that was a deep fake. And so for you and I to talk today, it's like how do we even go about finding common ground if, the news, the media, the entertainment that we've consumed is not real. So two, I guess, different examples would be,
Sure.
I mean, the current war that's going on right now between Israel and Hamas. Both sides use deepfake as propaganda tools. I do believe, and I don't mean to get heavy and political right now, but
Yep.
unfortunately, this is the real world. I believe a couple of the photos that emerged, Israel had blamed on deepfakes, and that this was like a real conversation on precisely what, like, are these images of war actually real or not? And some people dismissed it, and some people took it on face value. And I think both of these ways of acknowledging it or not acknowledging it are pretty dangerous. And we'll get to how to figure out if there is a way to see if the deepfake is real or not, I guess, further down the line. And then another one is fake audio surfaced of U.S. President Joe Biden announcing that he would be opening U.S. selective service draft to women. And so this prompted a TikTok trend that, got millions of views with the hashtag women draft, right? And so this is kind of a very, very peculiar, very strange, and very immediate effect of a deepfake can surface and then prompt a TikTok challenge. And this is what I mean is something can be not real and still manifest itself into reality and then reshape social consensus, reconfigure it. And frankly, if you're a Gen Z and I want to say this respectfully, but if you're a Gen Z who doesn't know how to critically think about things and just reacts on social media, you might see that hashtag and you might see all the views and all the attention that it's getting and just immediately create something and not do the fundamental research, the fundamental sense making to see if, like, is that hashtag real or not? And that seems like such a strange thing to do of, is this hashtag real? Is this hashtag based on something that is real? I don't think anybody cares about that. But this is what I mean is something can create this little artifact of social media that goes viral and then, reconfigures your psychology.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. No. Wow. What two excellent examples, and I'm sure there's enough I can think of. Very recently, some celebrities here in India, Bollywood celebrities, and they didn't realize, and deepfakes were used until it became out and so viral, and then there was a lot of debate about, and same thing that you brought up about the regulation around it. So let's talk, as best you can help say that. Okay, how does one sort of distinguish, right? I mean, if I don't know how many people just fall prey to a deep fake. So is there a way, simplifying without kind of making it very technical, is there a way for someone to know that, okay, like you said, the TikTok trend just took off, but no one spotted the deep fake, right? So how does one go about, kind of deciphering the fake to the real? And then the second question, the more important one, as you rightly said, if you're not building that muscle of critical thinking, boy, there's so much of an effect that comes to you as an individual, and perhaps more for that your generation or the Gen Z generation, where again, you're constantly sort of getting fed with so much, right? So two parts of the question. One is, how do we distinguish the fake to the real? And then maybe what are some of the psychological effects of some of this if it goes undetected, and then you believe and you kind of go on that road only to find out, hey, this is not real.
Yeah, I mean, these are important questions, and again, there is no surefire answer because deepfake technology, so creating deepfakes and detecting deepfakes are kind of like a cat and mouse situation where as one gets better, automatically the other gets better. And so anytime that we create this surefire deepfake detection tool, and there are many, I mean, just as an analogy, when ChatGPT came out and made all the ruckus, how many services, just magically popped up that were like, oh, if you put your documents in, we can tell if it's AI generated, right? And then we realized like a couple days after that even documents that were written by humans, when you put it into those services, they said that it was AI generated. So we have no kind of guardrails or regulations or ways to detect deep fakes technologically currently.
Okay.
Wholesale. I think that if you know, like let's use a very famous person, former President Trump. So if you know his gestures, if you know how he talks, if you know all of these things, number one, it's kind of weird if you know his micro gestures, but anyway, that's neither here nor there. If you know all of these things, you can kind of tell if something is a deep fake. Just, I guess, pattern recognition as a human, you can kind of tell if something's off, the uncanny valley situation. You can search a bunch of deep fakes on YouTube, and you can kind of see that they look and they sound like a human, but there's just something, maybe the eyes blink too much or they don't blink at all. Maybe the way that they fidget, it's robotic, it's mechanical. That's right now. And I hate being that person to say, oh, it's going to get way worse in the coming years. But it's true. As we get more data, as these technologies become more refined, we're going to get better and better deep fakes. And what that does for Gen Z, unfortunately, is it creates this kind of era of mistrust. Because right now, when you look online, there's this dead internet theory. It's just a theory that 60% of the internet is now bots, I believe. And when you look online and you realize everything that you read might be generated by AI, everything that you watch might be generated by AI, and every person that you talk to could be an artificial intelligence, whether it's like an avatar or a deep fake or something, that kind of puts you in a very strange spot as a young person. We grow up with technology. We expect technology, but we don't expect, I guess this is a messy sentence, but we expect to use technology as our filter into society, into sociality. But we still want the humanistic aspect. We still want to connect, I don't think that Gen Z are prepared to live in a world where half their Instagram stories, or more than half, are just like deep fake news. Just AI generated articles, and then like this deep fake CNN host talking about them. I don't think that they are prepared to live in that world. And I say prepared because, I mean, the statistic has come out. I put it in my book. Gen Z don't want to spend 15 minutes to check whether what they have consumed is true or not. And so any particularly sticky deep fake, anything that's pithy and touches culture in the right way and goes viral, it doesn't really matter whether it's real or not. It's going to affect culture. And so you're going to get Gen Z and maybe Gen Y and definitely Gen Alpha. You're going to get them sharing it, talking about it, embedding it into their psychology. And it might not even be real. It might just be this like little thing that was created in a couple of seconds and spit out. And if it touches the right, social media buttons, it can go viral and become this like a deep fake could move the needle in history, is what I'm trying to say. And that's like, we're not prepared for that.
Oh gosh. Yeah. I was just to kind of extend that thought here. Of course, we're talking about deep fakes, but help us also since you know technology well, that, okay, fine. Perhaps you give an example of President Trump that, okay, can you identify through the gestures and the movement and so on. So that's one way. But let's just kind of jump for a second. Even on the content that you mentioned on online, right? Let's say 50% or whatever that number is not real. What are some simple ways to cross-check that, right? I mean, today, even on TV channels, we hear that, okay, we got that report and we had to do a fact check, right? So just again, for the viewers to help us understand, just a quick way, and we'll move forward, but just curious, yeah, how can one do that?
Well, if you're using a ChatGPT like service, you don't know anything about a topic. Like I know very little about quantum physics, for example. And so if I ask ChatGPT to write me a paper about quantum physics, sure, I can absolutely say that it might know, and I say that very, very loosely. It might be able to sound more versed in the topic. But I was talking to someone, and she basically said that if she doesn't know something about the topic, she'll ask whatever LLM, whatever chatbot for the paper, and then she'll have to manually fact check. And that's not only is that a very strange behavior to do, just write the paper yourself if you're doing that. But I do think that that is one unfortunate like manual way of just if you consume something, anything, I think now we have to start telling people, look, you can't just consume and close. You have to do the critical thinking necessary, because you could be running algorithms in your mind that are not associated with reality. And this is particularly pertinent for Gen Z because they consume so much. The average Gen Z spends 10 hours a day on devices, particularly between 9 p.m. and 11 p.m. So if you're consuming for 10 hours a day, and then the most that you're consuming is between, the hours of 9 p.m. and 11 p.m., and then you're sleeping, it's like you consume so much noise. It's all built up in here. And then the bulk of it is right before you sleep. And so it's like, know that sleep is very important, stuff readjusts in your mind. And so again, it's like you have to do the critical thinking necessary. You have to put in the work. You have to not just, and I get it, Nikhil, I get it. I'm being very just like blunt about this, but I get it. It's not something that is easy to reconfigure in your life. We've grown up with everything is just fast. The attention span is 3 seconds now. We grew up with Vine, which was 6 seconds. The most influential TikToks, which is oxymoronic, are 15 seconds. It's like, yeah, we've grown up in a very like as technology has matured, it has gotten faster in the sense of we consume way faster. And so asking people to slow down and instead of taking 15 seconds and then swiping, take 5 minutes. It's like, okay, you're talking to a brick wall. But this is, I think, when we come to the education part, this is how we have to start talking to people and saying, look, just because culture or techno culture is in a certain position doesn't mean it's the healthiest position. Just because you've gotten used to it doesn't mean that you should not change. You should not think about why you're used to it. You should not think about what it's doing. One thing I want to touch on just before we move on, the psychological and social effects, is the liar's dividend. And so this is even more just like WTF. So let's take President Trump, a very controversial figure. Let's say a deepfake comes out of him. He could blame it on a deepfake, right? So deepfake comes out of him saying wild stuff. Most people wouldn't be surprised if that was real. So he says, no, it's a deepfake. But on the flip side, if he says that real audio was a deepfake, now we're just kind of in this pickle where you can blame anything that comes out on a deepfake. So any candidate, in any country could have this like massive scandal and they're using slurs and this and that. And they can just say, no, it was a deep fake. Someone just stole it and someone just stole my voice and uploaded it. And so for anybody that's involved with them, any voters, any supporters, they're kind of just like, well, was it real or not? And so there becomes this confusing, like, okay, if a deepfake comes out, they could actually claim responsibility, or if something real comes out, they could relinquish responsibility just because of deepfakes.
Yeah. Wow. My goodness. But I think just to go back to your original point, while I asked you on fact check, I think it's a good suggestion, even while maybe a bit strenuous. Just I think that level of self-awareness matters, right? And you almost don't become the slave of what you're seeing and what you're reading and what you're believing. And I think that's what you said. And I hope that every single one of our listeners is going to kind of pay some attention, because I just feel it's what's the data set that's gone in, and I heard the other day also, like, how some companies are willing to sell what they have to make a buck, and that again gets fed into which gets spread out on an chat GPT or any such AI sort of generated. Okay. But you're absolutely right, and you mentioned about elections as well, and we're seeing that this can be such a dangerous tool. Which brings me to that question, Ayush. What about the ethical consideration, right? On the one hand, you have where some of this technology is getting developed, right? You have nations like U.S., Canada, and look at something like India, where they're saying that, okay, well, again, it's one place where there could be a lot of use, and they're building talent for it, right? What are the ethical considerations, right? Because you want technology, there's no stopping of where that curve is going to now go and how steep it's going to get. It's certainly not a linear curve, but what are the ethical considerations? That's number one. Yeah, so let's just kind of address that first. Yeah.
Yeah, this is gonna make the conversation a little dark, and I
I
honestly,
want to get to
I'm
the
sure if you,
regulation part, but that probably also is something. I don't know how much progress has been made, but maybe we address the ethical part of it, saying that, okay,
yeah.
and maybe that those are somewhat closely related, right? So the ethics of it, and then the regulation of it, right? How much do we bring, or what do we bring, which draws that fine line of not imposing versus giving someone that creative freedom. So go ahead.
Um, yeah, Nikhil, this is going to be a very dark part of the episode, so I'm not sure if you're going to keep this in or not, but I guess we have to talk
No,
about it.
no, we want to
Um,
listen to it.
so, in terms of ethics, the most sinister, and I'm sure your listeners will become apoplectic after I say these things, um, are CSA, child abuse. And what we're seeing now is, so I'll just give a couple examples.
Sure.
At the time of writing, I think September 2023, the most recent case was out of New Jersey, where boys at Westfield High School spread AI-generated images that had faces of their female classmates on unclothed bodies. In Spain, 30 girls so far between the ages of 12 and 14 were sent pictures of themselves without clothes. The process of taking someone's photo and undressing it is being dubbed nudify. And it can happen to anyone with a single Instagram selfie. Further, a man in Wisconsin targeted middle school girls, and after receiving innocent photos, which I guess were just selfies, threatened to nudify them if they didn't send him further illicit images. And so, and again, I apologize to your listeners because it's very difficult hearing that. It's difficult even reading that. So this is the kind of the reality, and this is kind of like the gut punch of deepfakes, is that we are entering a world where if you even post images of your child online, if you post a selfie with them, they could be created into disgusting material for disgusting people. And there are no regulations for this. I don't really know how any, policymaker would try to stop that. It seems like a non-starter. And I say this with such like heartache because, the internet is supposed to be a place for connection. It's supposed to be a place where you upload things and you can share videos of your children, the most beautiful creatures. And then this happens where now you're worried of who has pictures of my child. What are they doing with them? And are they going to use these pictures as blackmail? Yeah, this is just a disgusting reality, and not just for children, but for anybody. I mean, if you're a female, for instance, you could just be turned into illicit material without you even knowing, and have that be sent to your family. Same thing for men. I mean, you could be made into an illicit deep fake and then have that be used as blackmail for money. And I don't like talking about these things because I don't want to give people ideas. I'm sure your audience is very benign, but it's like, how do you deal with that?
Yeah.
It's if it's an unregulated, uncontrolled technology that's been democratized, you give mass power to everybody, and unfortunately, that power is going to fall into the hands of very, very bad actors, or just kids that are trying to, do a prank, for instance. But this is unfortunately not a prank where you're knocking on someone's door and running away. This is potentially going to cause, grief and heartache and disruption in many millions of lives. And unless we talk about it, unless drastic action is taken, I don't know what that drastic action could be. This is just going to happen. Like, the floodgates are open, there's no closing them now.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. Ayush, look, this as much as we feel that, look, this is not going to make anyone comfortable, but you're right. There are enough cases I can think of here as well. Just in my own son's school, where someone almost uses as not so much extortion for money, but as a way to bargain. Hey, I got bad grades, and unless if
Oh,
this
wow.
is the result. Yeah, absolutely. And the whole cyber cell got involved, and they had in this case a class a girl who was sort of shown in a compromised position. But you're right. So let's since you're closer to this, Ayush, what have you seen? What's the amount of progress, or do you know of any sort of intent of kind of creating the regulation, or what is being thought about, or what is being put in practice now? So anything that you can shed light that what's happening.
I'm not aware of any major advancements being made. And I hope that that is just from self-negligence, that I'm just not updated in that realm. I truly hope. Um, but again, Nikhil, I don't know, like, just thinking about it from just a very fundamental point of view, I don't really know how you would even regulate it. Because if you try to take the deepfake websites down, it's like Hydra heads. You take one down, two more pop up.
Yeah.
Um, and the technology is out there. That's the thing, is that you can't really not, like, once culture touches something, it's very difficult, especially on the internet. It's very difficult to take it away. And and this is kind of like the game theoretic problem, where if you tell people that we are not allowing you to use a technology for XYZ, you inflate the problem of XYZ, because now people have magically figured out, like, oh, I didn't know you could use it for that. Now we can. So yeah, those are my thoughts on that.
Yeah. Okay. So now on to something very important here, Aish, where given all of what you've explained, right, and you've given examples and lots of good examples, as well as just how quickly this can spread like rapid fire. But what advice? I mean, amidst amidst the storm that is there, what advice would you have for the Gen Z, and maybe even for just the general population? Like, how do we tread this a bit more carefully? What are the ways I mean, what are some of the like simple ways to kind of just the do's and don'ts, right? Especially as you think of the younger cohorts of the Gen Z, where not so much we're in the college or working space, but there's a large population, is just by the age definition, they're kind of in the high school or just entering college, right? What advice would you have to, when you think about deep fakes, what some of the do's, don'ts, and maybe to the awareness that should go with it?
Yeah, it's a great question. So first, I think that we should really get used to challenging everything. Um, Regardless of how much you think a certain action or interaction is grounded in truth, especially on the internet, it is very important to just question and challenge everything. I'll give a very specific example. So in Hong Kong, a finance worker was tricked into paying $25 million um, due to being fooled by a deepfake of their CFO. And it wasn't just like a phishing email or anything. He was on a video call with a bunch of other participants, and all of them were fake.
Oh my
And
goodness.
and so it's a very funny, like, we can laugh. It's a very funny, it's sad
But very
reality.
expensive. Yeah.
Very expensive, right? And so just question everything, challenge everything. It seems like very just like duh advice, and I feel kind of silly even saying it. But right now, we are entering a period, especially if you're a young person. We can talk about older folks as well, but especially as a young person, there's a lot of hubris in using technology, and I have that too. There's a lot, as you say, Gen Y and previous generations adopted technology, Gen Z expects technology. And part of that expectation is a lot of hubris and naivete. It's a lot of, oh, I know that, don't worry about that.
Yeah.
Oh, we're Gen Z, we're the digital natives, let it go. We'll figure it out. I know how to use an iPhone, okay? I'm sure most young people are like the techies and the technicians for when their parents' phones stop working or a bug is encountered. Trust me, I am too. But there is kind of like that blind spot that we will all have in, oh, I could never be fooled by that. And this is one thing where I also struggle with this as well. As I think, if I may get personal, I think I did encounter a deep fake a while back. I didn't realize it was a deep fake until I saw news that it was a deep fake. The example is slipping the actual thing is slipping my mind.
But you're saying you
If I
fell trap for it. In other words, you.
Yeah, I fell for it. Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. I just like I saw it and I dismissed it. Like I saw it, registered it, acknowledged it, moved on. And then a couple of days later, it was like, oh no, that was a deep fake. And I was like, wait, hold on. And so yeah, like it's going to be growing pains, but again, I'm not saying I'm the best of the best, but the best also fall victim to it. And so don't beat yourself up about that.
Yep.
But on the flip side, I don't know if this is the last question or not, but
Yes.
if I may just extend it. On the flip side, there are positive use cases for deep fakes. Absolutely.
Yeah, that'd be great.
So I don't know if your audience is familiar with Black Mirror, but there's a great episode called Be Right Back. And essentially this is kind of like uploading, her, not to spoil it, but something happened to her partner and she wanted to see him again. And so she uploaded a lot of audio and video and kind of had that like chatbot, dealing with grief interaction. And this is a fantastic thing where, we're all mortals. We're all going to lose people in our lives. And so with the amount of data we have, with the amount of audio and video we have of our parents, of our spouses, of our friends, this might be a very powerful thing where it's not a replacement, but it might ease the transition. If you're able to use a ChatGPT-like system along with a deep fake and then create an avatar of your deceased.
So what happened in that one, Ayush? If I could just, if it's not,
No,
just curious because but you make a good point. But I'm curious, how did that help, or what was it like from there?
So again, a spoiler alert. I'm just going to talk about the episode. So what happened was her spouse, her boyfriend, I think, got into a car crash, and she couldn't deal with the grief, and so she uploaded all the audio, video, text messages, and kind of had this artificial intelligence of her boyfriend. And what Black Mirror extends that reality even further. And so there was a service where she could upload that kind of mind into a living human, or into like this thing that would replicate being a human. And what happened was, at the beginning of the episode, her boyfriend was looking at a picture and said, oh, we all look happy in this picture, but this was one of the worst memories I ever had. And then on the flip side, later in the episode, the I guess AI robot of the boyfriend was looking at that picture and said, oh, this looks so happy. And so like you kind of get that replacement, you kind of get like that superficial replacement, but it won't ever be the real thing.
Of course. And
so again, this is one of the powers of deepfakes, potential powers, potential benefits, is that we could kind of blunt the real initial impact of grief, and instead of just like one day they're there, the next day they aren't, make it kind of like an arc, a nice just like a nice layoff where you can still talk to them, you can still have their interactions, but slowly but surely you will get better. And I think that could be very powerful.
Yeah. Well, I like it. Let's to end our conversation on a positive about, there is potential, as you said, that, there is a potential, there is a positive benefit as well. But even more important was your advice, Ayush, on just the fact that challenge and question thinking, right? Slow down, be a little careful, because I think, as you say, even best of the best, right? They can kind of fall prey and sort of do the homework. Your hubris comment about hubris is so right, because sometimes the very thing that makes us successful can seduce us into kind of thinking, I can never go wrong. And I think that's just a very word to the wise, where be cautious. I think technology has made our lives better for so many reasons, but at the same time, we're seeing now the next curve, as you say, where some of these technologies can become extremely harmful. And the story that you mentioned about the executive, I know several of similar scandals have happened where people have gone on a call and just sort of transferred money and just believing everything. So this has been one fascinating conversation, Ayush. I know this will not be the last of the conversation. I'm going to come back to you, but I really hope our listeners, our viewers, are going to benefit from just simplifying, what deepfakes are, the ethical considerations, the regulatory debate that's going around it, and the ways in which we can spot, but just being cautious and sort of treading a new technology to see how it evolves. All right. So once again, Ayush, thank you very much. And I hope to meet you in person if your travels bring you to India as well. Thanks a lot and take care.
Thank you, Nikhil. Really enjoyed this conversation. I very hope to meet you in person in India or elsewhere, and
Yes.
hope to talk to you very soon.
Okay. Take care.